My sister was set to marry a guy who was a complete douchebag. He seemed like a nice catch to any outsider. He was tall, handsome, very confident, a doctor. Basically the sort of guy any woman would swoon over. Unfortunately, he was a sociopathic, unrepentant narcissist, devoid of any empathy, who would take out his anger on anybody he felt beneath him and seemed to enjoy doing it. You know how basically they say, don't look at how your partner treats you, look at how he treats others. And that's how he'll eventually treat you. My sister didn't pick up on that. I picked up on it early. This guy was really mean. Would berate and insult people for the smallest thing and would lose his cool with anybody who looked at him the wrong way. He started doing it to me, and I told my sister early on, this guy's an asshole. She was like,
Nah.
You two will eventually get along, you just got off on the wrong start. I told him I've seen him do that to other people, but she seemed to think, oh, but he's nice to me, I'm the special one. Maybe I can change him. Or I have no idea what she was thinking. After about 2 years together, when they were engaged, the cracks were evident. My parents loved him. His dad and my dad go way back. They both went to the same medical school together and have been close friends for decades. Her fiancé is also good friends with my 2 older brothers. After 2 years, my sister was realizing this guy was an asshole. He's always been an asshole, and he won't change. There was a really painfully obvious example one day when we were having dinner, and my sister's fiancé and my dad were having a discussion about something political. My sister tried to offer her opinion into the discussion, and they both snickered. Then this guy just started berating her and ripping into her in front of everyone, making her feel this small. I could sense her pain. She was just quiet and just sat there taking it. I was thinking, what are you doing with this guy? He has no respect for you. He has no love for you. Another time our family was at this dinner function where a lot of big people were around. My sister's fiancé completely left my sister alone at the table with me, and was sitting at this other table with 2 women, very obviously flirting with them semi-drunk. He just left her all alone at the table. I asked her what was wrong, why was he ignoring her? She told me they had had an argument earlier and this was his way of punishing her. You see what I mean when I say this guy is a complete sociopath? My sister and I are really close, and even though I'm younger by far, little brothers aren't devoid of wisdom. And I've been urging her from day one to break up with this guy before she gets in too deep. Well, now that she'd spent 2 years with him and was engaged, she was obviously in too deep. And she used to tell me about all the outbursts he has, how he treats her with no respect. We often had long discussions, just me and her, where she'd spill open like a can of beans and just divulge all the bullshit that he's put her through recently. Sometimes she'd cry and I'd be there to help her out, but she still seemed to want to stick with him. She actually convinced herself that he loved her behind all that horrible treatment, and couldn't pull herself to cancel the engagement, what with our parents, his parents, everyone counting on it. She knew they'd all say she's crazy, turning down this smart, handsome doctor. I kept urging her to break up, but she stuck with the he'll change or he loves me deep down excuses. It all came to a heads when one day she very publicly exploded at him. We were having a huge dinner, both sides of our families, and I was sitting next to him. He kept bullying me the entire night. Move your elbows over, couldn't you wear something a bit more presentable? Stop sticking your hand out like that, it's rude, don't you think you've had enough of that? If I asked him to pass a bowl or the sauce or something, he'd hand it over but then pull away and be like, say please, say thank you. He was smiling the entire time, laughing. My 2 older brothers were also snickering. They didn't seem to mind this guy was publicly bullying me and having fun with it. He and my dad started having one of their conversations again, and my dad started airing out all his general frustrations and disappointments regarding me. And they started both talking about my life openly in front of me. Her fiancé then turned to me and started openly lecturing me, and when I tried to ignore him, hey, are you listening to me? What's the matter with you? Your dad never taught you any respect? My sister just then basically exploded. She was sitting at the other side of the table, guessing she didn't want to be near him, but she was watching what was going on the entire time. My sister just then basically exploded. She was sitting at the other side of the table, guessing she didn't want to be near him, but she was watching what was going on the entire time. My son Simon, he is 16, moved out of the room he used to share with his little brother and got his own room a few months back. Ever since, he's been complaining about his mom barging in without knocking and interrupting his sleep and studying. Sometimes when he's changing. I know that she's his mother, but he says he's got his own room and has a job and is learning to become an independent adult, but doesn't feel like his privacy is being respected even when that's his mom. He says he's not a kid anymore and is entitled to at least get a knock on the door before she comes in. He was getting tired of her not listening to him, so he came to me and said, "Dad, you need to help me set some clear boundaries with Mom." So I spoke to her about her need to knock before entering Simon's room. She was like, "What? And no, we're family, not strangers. Do you really expect me to foolishly knock on the door 5 times a day? That's ridiculous. Also, the knocks doors in their own home?" I told her my family, for instance. She made a face, then went on a rant about how my family hate each other's and the way they treat each other's like they were strangers is shameful. I told her family or strangers, it's about respecting one's privacy. We had an argument about it and I told her if she wasn't going to stop with the barging and refuse to knock on the door before entering, then our son will get a lock. She did it again at 11 p.m. She barged in when our son was asleep. He jumped up because he got scared. Once he told me this, I told him to go ahead and get a lock and pay for it with his own money. There was literally no other way. My wife saw it and got upset, and my brother was visiting when she was raising her voice at me if I really went ahead and got a lock for Simon despite her disapproval, and said that I caught her off guard and it's not okay. Because this teaches our children that they can manipulate one parent into doing what they want. I told her that Simon got the lock, not me, and I already warned her about the possibility of him getting a lock because he was getting tired of her boundary crossing. So she should have expected this outcome. She mentioned the same above points in her defense and said locks mean secrets, and that's not good. My brother was sitting watching while she was complaining. She began chewing him out when he asked her to let Simon keep the lock and said it wasn't a big deal. She stopped talking to me and Simon till we remove the lock, but I've no intentions on doing that. My husband, 35 years old, does not have a car. He sold his old one to help pay for his brother's wedding. I did not agree on this, but he had this car before we got together, so it's a shared property. Besides that, I have my own car, so that did not affect me till my husband started complaining about having to commute to work and hangout places. He tried to get me to let him drive my car several times, but I stood firm and put a boundary, making him understand that my car will never be driven by him. One of the reasons why is because of how bad his driving is. His brother lives out of town. My husband asked if he could drive my car to the wedding, but I refused, but not because I'm not invited. Another story for another day, because like I said, my car is off limits. He threw a fit, calling me unreasonable to let him take public transportation because he can barely stand it for 10 minutes, let alone hours. I said it wasn't my problem, which irritated him but made him stop arguing about it. The day that he was supposed to travel out of town, I woke at 10 a.m. and couldn't find my car key. I went outside and couldn't find my car either. I was beyond pissed. I called him and like I expected, he took it and was on his way to the other town. I lost it and told him I gave him no permission to take it for a whole 5 days and said that if he won't turn around with it and come home, then I'd call the cops and report it missing. His response was, "You wouldn't dare do it 'cause you know what would happen." I hung up on him, then immediately called the police and told them about my situation. I did not tell them my husband took it because they'd think it's a family dispute and decide to not get involved. I just reported it missing. 2 hours later, I got a call from my husband saying he was back in town and was being held at our local police station. I went to the station and talked to the cops. My husband made a scene there, swearing over and over that I gave him permission to take it and said I was acting out of jealousy and spite because he was going to attend a wedding that I was not invited to. I took my car and went home, but he had to stay a little longer. He came home in the evening and went on a rage fit about how I created an awful situation and almost caused him to miss his brother's wedding. He called me vindictive, bitter, and a lunatic to call the police on him and try to accuse him of stealing my car. He had to leave the same day to be able to be there with his family and decided to extend his stay, and he still hasn't gotten back yet. Right now his mom and brother are blasting me for what happened and calling me spiteful. I manage a team of employees in a very specialized industry. The employees are hired on 2-year contracts that are mostly automatically renewed. Salaries are fixed for the duration of the contract, but raises are negotiated at time of renewal. There are no non-competes. I have one employee, Sarah, who requested a meeting with me last week to discuss a possible raise. I informed her that it is a little early as her contract won't expire until Jan. And I would be happy to discuss it in November. She told me she would like to discuss it now as her current salary does not reflect the amount of work she is doing. So I set up a meeting with her on Friday and told her I will hear her out. To her credit, she gave well thought out presentation listing the average salary in her field, the extra responsibilities she had to take on, and the extra revenue she was able to generate, etc. In the end, she asked for a 19% raise to stay on. This was a substantial jump, but I thought she made some good points and, with inflation being what it is, I can sell it to the managing partner that we are locking down a good employee for 2 more years. After the presentation, I told her I will just approve the raise and talk to the managing partner about starting her new contract early. Since the only things we are changing are the salary numbers, we can have the new contract ready for her to sign by Tuesday. She seemed very surprised that I did not try to negotiate and looked a little shell-shocked that the meeting was over so quickly. So anyways, I spent the entire weekend selling the raise to the partners and harassing legal to get the documents ready. However, when I gave her the documents to sign this morning, she asked for another meeting to discuss salary. She informed me that after doing more research over the weekend, her pay is still not reflective of all the work she is doing. At this point, I got pretty annoyed and told her that we can discuss in 2 years. I thought that was the end of it, but after lunch she came to my office with 3 offers letters she received from our competitors. One in our city with a salary that is 2 to 3% higher, and 2 from other states that are 8 to 9% higher. She asks for the new salary to at least match the competitor in our city to stay. At this point, I got very frustrated and told her that she is now free to work for our competitor because her contract with us will not be renewed. She called me in and left crying, immediately telling all her coworkers that I fired her for asking for a raise, which obviously caused quite an uproar. My wife thinks that I am the because I could have just said no. She probably had the other offers for a while and was never going to actually leave. She recommended that I offer her back the new contract. Anyways, I am contemplating going back to the office tomorrow and offering Sarah her new contract again. But I just felt like the relationship between us is ruined after this whole situation. Her currently contract is negotiated 2 years ago, which is why there is a discrepancy in pay with the current offers. There are also a lot of reasons for differences in salary even within the same city. Perhaps less PTO, maybe more responsibilities, maybe they lock them in the contract for 3 years instead of 2. Which is happening more and more now. Maybe they have a non-compete, or maybe they are better. I can't say. Her contract expires Jan, so she has plenty of time left at the company if she wants to finish out. Sarah is WFH today, so I sent her an email apologizing for overreacting yesterday, and informing her that she is an important member of our team and that I worked really hard to get her the raise she initially requested. The new offer still stands provided she return the signed contract to me today before 5 p.m. I would be happy to execute it immediately and get her sorted out before the next payment period. She emailed back also apologizing for her reaction yesterday and said that she enjoyed working here and feels like she really has an opportunity to grow. But she then ended the email asking if I would still be willing to reconsider upping the offer to match her other offer. At this point, I just can't even anymore. I basically ignored her email, and at 5:01 p.m. with no signed contract from her, I sent an email to the managing partner I was talking to all weekend. Hope this email finds you well. I am writing to inform you that Sarah has elected to decline the new contract as it is written. She has informed me that she received an offer from our competitor with a salary of XXX. I have attached a scanned document of the offer letter with this email for your convenience. She has requested that we match that salary to retain her services as our current offer is insufficient. As of right now, her contract expires January 22nd. Please advise on the next steps.